Welcome, everybody. This is the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association's October meeting. This is October 18th. We also are joined by our Zoom folks that couldn't join us in person. Thank you for coming. We have a few agenda items before we bring our Assembly member, Laura Friedman, who's going to tell us all about herself and tell us all about some fun things going on in the state and the country and everything else like that. She's going to solve all of our world problems. Okay. So anyway, we usually have the board members come up here and introduce themselves. We're not going to do that tonight. If the board members can just stand up and I can acknowledge you. The Zoom folks cannot see you, but Tom Glick is in the back. Sean is right here. Bob Anderson, he's our vice president. We have Jay Weitzler, Maria Calvin, also our vice president. Jules Fear, Bob Anderson. I'm sorry, John Eisen, and then Larry Slade in the back. Larry does our homeless and our homeless committee chair. So you'll hear some of those folks as far as their committee reports. So just a show of hands, is that a better way to do it than them come on up and introducing themselves? Okay, great, thank you. Okay, we have no senior lead officers tonight. We have a couple folks from the community. Ryan, you want to come up here? And I think that's it. Oh, sorry. Okay. Whoever, come on. Neighborhood council.
Hi, everyone. Lindsay from the Neighborhood Council. We had a board meeting last night. We've adopted a position of opposed to the Ethel Avenue development project. So if you have any issues on that, visit us online, shermanoaksnc.org. You can email me or anyone else on the board. If anything new shows up, we'll take care of that. Also, we have a movie in the park on Saturday, November 4th in partnership with CD4. Inside Out, right? Yes, so come to the park, join us, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Lindsay. Just a show of hands, and again, I'm going to go ahead and for the folks on the Zoom call, obviously you can't, but just a show of hands, who in this community or in this room here is in support of putting a 7-story apartment building in a R1, a single family neighborhood? You can just raise your hand if you support that issue. Okay, so just for the record and just for the Zoom callers as well, I just want to let you know that what Lindsay had just talked about, the answer is 0. Nobody supports that. Come on, Ryan. Oh, sorry. That's
great. Hi, everyone. Ryan Ahari, Sherman Oaks, and I am Senior Field Deputy for Councilmember Nithya Raman. Good to see you all tonight. I want to let you all know about a couple of things. I wish our senior leads were here. I do wanted to let you all know, in conjunction with your advocacy, I'm thinking of people like Sean Kurzweil, but also the council members speaking with the mayor's office, we were able to get Circle expanded to Sherman Oaks. So I know Sean's very happy right now. Circle is the crisis and incident community-led engagement program. This is the alternative to unarmed, non-violent calls involving homelessness on our streets, which will allow LAPD to better respond to more urgent, timely phone calls. 60% of our phone calls coming into LAPD are homelessness related, so this is really going to free up their time. What this means is beginning November 1st, if you call 911 or the non-emergency line, which is 877 Ask LAPD, when you describe a situation that again is non-violent and non-urgent involving a person experiencing homelessness, they will send out a Circle team instead. So they will bring out folks who are caseworkers, who are behavioral therapists, and those folks will be responding, and their time of response is within like 30 minutes. So this is a big deal because we've been pushing for it in the Valley. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Sean. I want to let you all know again, November 1st, this is the change that's going to be coming. And then finally, I want to just let you all know home sharing. We've continued to have quality of life issues coming with home sharing issues in Sherman Oaks. I see my friend Tom here. We've been working on a couple of properties in Sherman Oaks. The council member introduced a motion earlier in 2022. It took a year and a half for the planning department to give this report back. Her motion was basically better enforcement between LAPD, LADBS, the planning department, housing department, and all other relevant agencies regarding issues surrounding the quality of life with home sharing problems. So this report back was finally issued. The city is ramping up its enforcement. I'm happy to share it to anyone who would like it. And finally, again, with community advocacy and the council member working with different departments, we were able to finally get a public database for home sharing properties. So up until now, if we needed to find out if a property was registered or not, I had to manually email planning department and ask them, and maybe if they had time in a few months, respond and let me know whether a property was compliant or not. But now there's a public facing database, and you can also use this website to file complaints as well. So this is something we've all been pushing for. I'll be in the back room if you have any questions, and thank you.
Thank you. So there's a few board members that have reports. So if you guys can come on up here, it's going to be in this order: Larry Slade, then Jules, then Jay Weitzler, Maria Calvin, and then Bob Anderson. And also, just so you guys know, that we are going to have a quick report from Buckley School after our assembly member. After the conversation with Laura. So stick around just for a few minutes to learn about what Buckley School is doing, and then I'll also let you guys know who the speaker is going to be next week. So,
okay. Okay, thank you. I will be brief. Then I want to introduce Howard Jaffe, who's a member of my committee, who's going to make an announcement and tell you about some exciting work we're doing. My name is Larry Slade. I have the honor of chairing the homelessness committee for the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association. There's a group of us who've been meeting for about over a year now, close to a year and a half, to talk about, plan, and strategize about what has become one of the most profound challenges to the sanctity of our community. And since the last 27 years I've been living here, and many of you have been living here much longer, the presence of agitated and potentially dangerous homeless people on the streets are shifting the sense of sanctity we have in our communities, and is probably one of the most profound things that upsets what we cherish about our community. The fact that we're a major community in the San Fernando Valley, that whole energy has been changed by what's going on, and we're working on trying to address those problems. As I've said in the past, there's been a lot of money and resources thrown at the homelessness problem in the last couple of years, and more to come. I am very curious to see whether or not that will actually have an impact on the problem, but some of the ground level things that we can do in the meantime to help address and mitigate this problem is to do some cleanup behind them to try to keep our community clean. And I'm going to turn over to Howard Jaffe to talk about that.
Hi, in addition to being a member of the Homeless Committee, I'm actively involved in an organization called Volunteers Cleaning Communities. You might have seen us on the streets. We're wearing yellow vests or yellow shirts, cleaning Ventura Boulevard, Moore Park, and other areas here in Sherman Oaks. What I'd like to tell you as a group now is that we're planning a major cleanup here in Sherman Oaks on December 2nd. This is going to be co-sponsored with SOHA and VCC, and we'd like to get as many people out as possible and see what we can do. Plan is to cover from Sepulveda to Woodman. And if we get enough people, we'll get it organized, we'll have the tools, we'll have all the equipment. So I'm looking for SOHA to assist in getting people out for that event. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Well, I'd like to make an announcement that on December the 10th, SOHA will be having its 25th annual toy drive. At Gelson's Market. It's a big deal event. These toys that are collected, these are unwrapped toys, are distributed by the Department of Children and Family Services to the kids under their care. And for the most part, these are the only gifts that these kids got or received. So please attend. The hours are from 11 to 2. It's at Gelson's on Van Nuys Boulevard. And most of you have probably been there, but you know they supply refreshments and things like that. And it's a big deal. So please attend. I thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm hoping that all of you got our call to action that we sent out at the beginning of the month. And did you all act on it? Great. Because there'll be another one being sent out in a couple of weeks, because we do think we have to get to the mayor and explain to her that we really don't mind rezoning LA, but we do think there are places that need to stay as if they are, and our neighborhoods is one of them. But we've done maps, and we've talked about all the communities in the city that we have organized. We have sat down with them and worked on maps on where would you do it if you had to come up with some housing locations. But we're not getting a lot of traction from the planning department on this, and we're going to continue to try to get to the mayor so we get some attention. So thank you, and if you see that next call to action, please act on it. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. Hi, I'm Bob Anderson, and I'm working on the Metro Sepulveda Transit Corridor project. And a little information for you. If you read my newsletter article this month, I talk about the fact that they're going to have a meeting. That wasn't the original article. The original article complained, why haven't they had any meetings? Of course, as soon as I gave it to the printer, they announced a meeting. So we had to rewrite it. But Metro is going to have a meeting on the Sepulveda Transit Corridor, 3 meetings actually. The one is Tuesday, October 24th, and that's in Westwood at the Westwood United Methodist Church. And the Valley meeting is in the morning at 10 a.m. till 12:30, and that's at the Marvin Browdy Auditorium, and that's Saturday the 28th. And there's also going to be a Zoom meeting. I can't give you the link here because nobody's going to remember 50 numbers in a row or whatever it is. But I don't know what they're going to talk about, but if you notice this article on the table and read it, my friend Fred Rosen from Bel Air and I wrote this. We're going to try and get it in some significant publications because we're pretty fed up with Metro spending $100 million to study things they can't afford and not admit it. And so we're going to hand these out at the Metro meeting. That should be an interesting thing to do. And we'll see what happens. And Fred is from Bel Air, and he has started an organization called Keep Bel Air Beautiful. And that organization filed suit against Metro after they refused to provide us public documents under a California public records request. And I was on the phone with the attorneys and Fred about a month ago, and they're giving us wonderfully useful documents like the Spanish translation of the English presentation at their meetings from 2019. I mean, it's just very useful stuff. And also how the repair costs for a roof in Pacoima on one of their buildings. Nothing to do with the project. I've gotten 1,000 documents. I've gone through all of them, and probably 12 are decent to have. They're just stonewalling us. So we're looking forward to the public meeting. I hope they're open and honest, but they haven't been. And it's very sad because it's our public money. Assemblymember Friedman is chair of the Transportation Committee. It's her state money going to people who are not using it responsibly. And it's a sad thing to see that happen. We need transit. We don't need people studying transit to make more money. We need people to do something. And we just hope it'll happen. So thank you.
Thank you. We have a great board and you guys do fantastic work. Thank you so much. I just, somebody had brought to my attention, I totally forgot to mention this earlier, but lack of doing something has consequences, and doing the wrong thing has consequences as well. A Sherman Oaks institution is no longer with us as of yesterday. I'm not sure if you guys know, but Mark's Garden on Ventura Boulevard, that wonderful, wonderful florist that's been in the community for, I think, almost 30 years, probably 20-something years, 25 years at least, got burned to the ground yesterday. And this got burned to the ground not as a hate crime, but as from a woman who was arrested this weekend for burning 10 other businesses. Burning 10 other businesses around the city of Los Angeles. She was arrested, and guess what? She was let out, 0 bail, 0 time in jail. So when I say consequences, you guys, our community, and a wonderful, wonderful man, Mark, who started that with his partner, Ray, 25 years ago, whatever it was, no longer has a business. All these employees don't have jobs anymore because our system failed again. And our district attorney, who continues to let people out in this revolving door, we let him do that because we voted for him. So you guys, just pay attention to what's going on and get involved like you are here tonight. And just wanted to mention that. Okay, so on a brighter note, we have Assemblymember Laura Friedman here. Thank you. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi. I hope you're not anyway.
What?
I'm just kidding. I was going to make a joke, but it's too early. I don't know you that well. So you have been in politics since, I believe it was 2004, 2006. Is that right? Well, okay. So anyway, so Laura was a council member in Glendale, a mayor in Glendale, and has been assembly member since 2016. And you are going to be, or you've already declared that you're running for Adam Schiff's job as for Congress for 2024, correct? Okay. Other than that, you had a career before that in entertainment industry. And we'd like to know a little bit more about you. So if you can tell us a little bit more about yourself other than what I picked up on Wikipedia, love to know about you. Then we have a few questions for you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me to come tonight. I'm here not because I'm running for Congress, but because I'm your state legislator now. And I take that very seriously. And I am your state legislator because of redistricting. So I wanted because you're relatively new to me because of the redistricting, I wanted to tell you a bit about myself and to also present you with the legislative package that we got signed into law this year, and to, of course, hear your thoughts and answer your questions. So let me first thank you all very much for your work, for everything that you do, all the meetings you have, all the long metro meetings you go to, for reading all those documents, everything else. Really appreciate it. I also want to say another business I just found out that I have loved for many years, where I actually used to be a vendor, is closing, which is the Sherman Antique Mall, which makes me personally very sad. I used to have a booth in that mall because I sell antiques on the side. So they're going to be closing in December, and if you're looking for some unique holiday gifts, give them a visit, because those vendors don't know where they're going next and what they're going to do with all of their stuff. And they have beautiful things there. So really sorry to see that change as well. I am Laura Friedman, and I was born in New York, but raised in South Florida. And I was told that I should talk about my background, personal background. I went to college in upstate New York at the University of Rochester. And I went there actually because I wanted to be an astrophysicist. We were talking about the science fair. And then I realized that there was a lot of math involved. So that lasted like a week. But then I also realized that when I read science fiction, it was more of the fiction side that I was attracted to. So I pivoted and I studied film and worked for a bunch of years in New York City after college for HBO and other film companies. And then I got a job at Paramount Pictures in 1992. And I moved to Los Angeles, was living in Hollywood until the year 2000, working at different film studios for different film producers. I produced 5 feature films. I was an executive for over 20 years in the industry. Really loved my career. During that time, I was also starting to volunteer a lot for the LA Conservancy doing historic preservation, because I love built history. I love what I found in Los Angeles was this incredible sense of place, and fell in love with things like the Cinerama Dome and the Tower Records building, and the Capitol Records building, and lots of the historic resources that at the time were under threat in the 90s. So I worked to save a lot of those buildings. We nominated the case study buildings, if you know those. We helped save the Cinerama Dome when it was going to go under the wrecking ball, because I think that preserving the things that give us that sense of place and identity are very important, the things that we cherish as a community. So in 2000, I bought my house in Glendale and moved there. And because I was still doing historic preservation, I got involved in some preservation issues in Glendale, which got me kind of involved with my neighborhood. That's how I got involved with the neighborhood, like a lot of you. And then a developer bought a lot around the corner from me. I live in the Glendale foothills. And the developer then proceeded to propose lobbing off the top of a hill to build a giant McMansion, an over 10,000 square foot house. And I was a neighbor, and I thought this wasn't the right way to do development. And I went to the design review board. Glendale has design review, and I advocated against that building and kind of got chased out by the developer. We lost, the neighborhood lost. By the way, a year later, when they were building, the entire hill collapsed on 3 houses behind them and did a lot of damage because it was the wrong way to build up there. And so I applied to be on the city's design review board, and I got appointed as a historic preservation, kind of expert. And I spent 5 years from 2005 until 2009 doing a lot of the planning issues that I know you guys spend a lot of time focusing on, trying to help my community figure out how do we do development that's compatible with our neighborhoods, that's additive, and that puts something in that's going to last for 50 years and improve people's quality of life. And dealt with a lot of the issues that I know you deal with, like a neighbor who wants a second floor on their house, and the neighbor who says no because now you're going to be able to look down into my yard. And there's some of the hardest things to navigate in all of city government, I think, those kind of neighbor versus neighbor issues that come up a lot on planning commissions. And I know that all of you have been involved in a lot of that in the last few years. So 2 things happened during that time. And I was watching the Glendale City Council and thinking that maybe one day in the future, I'd run for city council. And the 2 things were that first, my father's second wife, who I loved dearly, died of cancer, and I was by her bedside when she died with her family around her. And I started thinking a little bit more about what was important to her at the end of her life. And then I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I spent a year going through treatment. And I was in my 30s, totally blindsided by this. Never thought, I kind of thought I was sort of immortal. In your 30s, you're like, well, I'm going to run for city council in 20 years. But I decided that year that I wanted to spend whatever time I had left making a difference in my community. And I decided to run for city council, and I was successful. I was, I think, only the 5th woman to ever be elected to Glendale City Council, even though the city was over 100 years old. Went on the council, was on the city council from 2009 through the recession until 2016, when I successfully ran for state legislature, where I have been ever since. We focus on a whole bunch of issues in my office. Just so you know, we think of the issues that we take on in 3 different buckets. One bucket being trying to support vulnerable communities. So I adopted my daughter, who's now 10 years old. I adopted her 10 years ago. And we spent a couple of years trying to build the foster care system. So we had some exposure to what kids go through who are taken into foster care because of abuse and neglect, and how we don't support these children nearly enough. So every year we do legislation to try to support and uplift foster youth. We've done a lot of work to just figure out who in our community needs extra help. So we've done work for hospital patients successfully. We've done work about code enforcement in slum buildings successfully. We've done a lot of work to try to advocate for people who don't normally come in to advocate for themselves. The second bucket we look at is the environment. I care a lot about sustainability, a lot about climate change, a lot about toxic materials, water quality, air quality, and we do a lot of legislation around the environment, and I chair the environmental caucus in the legislature. The third bucket are things that I think of as being very local issues, although they actually tend to be issues that a lot of people care about across California. And in this come things like our housing crisis and homelessness, how we deal with housing affordability, how we support people who are on our streets, get them off the streets, issues around transportation and around water. So that said, I want to now pivot and just help walk you through the bills that we got signed into law this year, and 3 bills that are now 2-year bills. And I do want to mention one bill that was vetoed, which again was around foster youth. To me, you don't save money by taking away opportunities for people who have a very high likelihood of becoming homeless or ending up in our criminal justice system. But unfortunately, a bill that we had that would have compelled our counties to give foster youth who are emancipating out of the system what's already required by law, but which is sometimes not done, which is give them an ID so they can get housing and get, into educational systems, apply for a job, and have a housing navigator so that they have less of a chance of ending up on our streets. That bill was vetoed over cost concerns. So now let me go through the bills that we did get signed. And I was told if I push the up button, something happened. Did I do it wrong? Sorry. Did I push this? The down button. Okay. 50-50 chance. Okay. So these bills are just in numerical order, not in order of importance. I've done a lot of bills that I said before about protecting people from toxic materials and consumer products. We've successfully done bills to get PFAS chemicals out of children's clothing and children's products. This year, we took on chemicals that are carcinogenic or endocrine disruptors and otherwise made the list of over 120 chemicals that have been banned in the EU because of their toxicity. We worked with the personal care industry on this. They did not oppose the bill. They actually supported the bill. And this bill now will ban 26 of the most highly toxic materials that are used in shampoo, in hair products, in other cosmetics from being able to be used in California. AB 645 is a bill that is controversial, but I think really important. I want you to know I've been working on this bill. I've introduced this bill now for 4 years running, and it had been introduced even before I did it, and it's now been signed into law. And I'm going to tell you what, when I tell you what it is, you're going to shake your head and say you hate it, but when I finish, you're going to like it. I'm going to make that bet with you. This is a bill that allows for 6 cities in California, including Los Angeles, for 5 years to pilot the use of cameras for automated speed enforcement. Some people are already cheering. I love it. So let me tell you how we've addressed the legitimate concerns that have been raised around this policy. And if I'm talking too long, tell me and I'll speed up, okay? Because we got a few more bills to go through. So the bill, you have to be going at least 10 miles. You have to be going more than 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. So it's not this thing that you're going 6 miles an hour. You realize that you have to be going pretty fast to get a ticket from the camera. The first ticket you get is a warning. Forever, it's a warning. First ticket. Within 30 days of any particular camera being installed, everyone gets tickets, no matter how many times you get a ticket, that are warnings. There's no facial recognition technology used. It's a license plate reader. So the ticket goes to the car like a parking ticket. There's no points on anyone's license. And rather than several $100s in fines and ports on your license, you will get, if you're going 10 to 15 miles an hour above, it's a $50 fine. If you're 270% of the area median income, it can be reduced by 50%. So it's a $25 ticket. If you're 80% lower than the area median income, so if you're low income, it's reduced by 80%. The ticket, and the judge can order community service instead of you paying a fine. And then there's an escalator for every 10 miles an hour over the speed limit you go. So no facial recognition technology. You have to be going at least 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. We have to warn you before you come to the cameras because we want to slow you down. So you'll pass signs, flashing signs that say you're coming into a speed enforcement zone. The cameras can only be used in locations that are either by a very vulnerable population, schools, so in front of a school, or in areas where there's been a lot of street racing reported, like maybe Van Nuys Boulevard, or in areas where we've had a higher rate of accidents than in other areas. So places like PCH, where there was just another awful accident where 4 pedestrians lost their lives, young college students.
No pedestrians.
I thought they were pedestrians. Okay, sorry, 4 people lost their lives. So this is something that I have worked with road safety groups on for a number of years, particularly the walk bike groups, pastors, the faith-based community, particularly in low-income communities where they just bury a lot of people because those communities tend to have more pedestrians and cyclists killed because of speeding. AAA came on this year in support. In the past, they've always opposed it, but we've worked so hard on this policy to make it equitable and make it fair. Last thing I'll say about this bill is none of the money can go into the city's general funds. None of it. It only can be used to administer the program, and then any other money that's captured has to be used for physical traffic calming in those same neighborhoods where they have the cameras. And if they don't reduce the number of tickets they're giving within 18 months, they have to do physical improvements or remove the camera. Because the goal is not to make money or to have a speed trap. The goal is to reduce speed. So really happy that that bill got signed into law. AB 894 is a bill that allows for developers, within certain constraints that cities can put on them, to by right across California share parking with a next door developer that has unused parking. So if you're building, let's say, a flower shop, and the guy next to you has an old office building where 2 stories of their parking lot are empty, you can enter into a lease with them, a long-term lease, to use that parking for your code required parking, with parameters that, in this case, the city of LA puts around, that would say things like it has to be 15 lease, it's X amount of, it has to be the same number of spaces, you have to be within, 100 feet or whatever, whatever parameters they put around it, it allows for that sharing of parking. Because we have areas where we just have a glut of parking. My office building, where we have our offices in downtown Burbank, even before COVID, the parking lot that I park in for our office building, only 1 floor is ever used. There's 5 floors of empty parking. And yet they still require people to add parking on their development, even if they're right next door. So that was a bill that was actually supported by local governments, and it does allow them to come up with what the parameters are. There's that bill. AB 1059 is another one of my consumer safety bills. You probably don't know this, but a percentage of mattresses have fiberglass in their core. And for those of you who might be doctor or public health expert, fiberglass is a lot like asbestos. It's little fibers, and if it gets lodged in your eye or in your lungs, it has really negative health impacts. Cystic fibrosis, cornea, you can destroy your eye, and it makes the mattresses not recyclable. So this bill bans the use of fiberglass in mattresses, and it also bans flame retardant chemicals, which are not necessary and which are carcinogenic, so that all of us can sleep a little bit better every night. This bill was also supported by the mattress industry, which I like to call big mattress. AB 1132 removes the sunset on a bill I did several years ago, which stops cities from price gouging homeowners who want to put rooftop solar. So that it says you can charge a nominal fee to permit those, but you can't price gouge people if they want to do a simple solar installation on their roof. This bill had, like many of my bills, this bill had bipartisan support. The mattress bill actually had a Republican member who jockeyed it on the Senate side. So it's nice when you can build consensus. AB 1322 builds on legislation that I worked on, that I successfully passed several years ago. Any of you animal lovers here? Anyone love P22? Remember the awful photos of P22 where he looked like he had mange? That mange is caused by poisoning by rodenticide, which is a secondary unintended poisoning from the use of these rodenticide poisonings on rats, anticoagulant rodenticides to be specific. So this bill allows other kinds of rodenticide, but not the anticoagulants. It expands a ban that we passed years ago on certain types of anticoagulants, because what it does is it makes the rats hemorrhage internally. That's how it kills them. But what happens is the rats take a while to die. So they go stumbling out into the street and they get eaten by the mountain lions, the owls, the hawks, your dog sometimes. Something like 3,000 dogs die a year because of food poisoning from rodenticide as well. And so it kills the predators, the apex predators that are actually keeping us free and many times in the hillside from rats, disrupts the chain, and is not necessary. That bill will ban more of these anticoagulants. AB 1377 is a bill about homelessness. I do chair the Transportation Committee, very concerned about homelessness, and we're starting to get a lot of reports last year about the number of homeless people who are using our transit system as a place to live, particularly the train stations, where people were camping in the train stations, staying on the subways. They probably don't feel safe up in the streets, but this is something that's really untenable for transit users. People who are in transit want to, not have to stand on a platform with people that maybe they don't know if they're safe or not. And there's a lot of impacts from just unsanitary conditions. People shouldn't be living in our transit system. But I also found out that our county homeless agency, LASA, was not offering services in our transit agencies. They were saying it wasn't their jurisdiction. They just, for whatever reason, they weren't cooperating with LA Metro. So to me, that's unacceptable that our agencies are not coordinating. So this bill basically says that our homeless agencies all across the state of California will now have to whenever they go for funding for homelessness to the state, they have to explain how they're counting people who might be trying to live in transit systems and how they are cooperating with our transit agencies to offer services to those people to get them into a shelter and to another place to live. So we don't have this gap anymore where we're not counting and we're not providing services. That was also something. AB 1399. So did you know that for many years now, for several years, if you have a baby or a child or for yourself, your doctor can choose to have a visit with that individual through telehealth, through Zoom. You're not feeling well enough to go to the doctor, your doctor can go on Zoom, look at your symptoms and say, hey, you should go to the emergency room, you should come in, or take a couple Tylenol, stay home. Do you know that you can't do that for your pet? That telehealth has been illegal in California. Crazy, right? So what we learned during COVID is that there's thousands of people across California who live too far away from a vet, can't afford a vet, who went to the vet when we allowed that telehealth during COVID. This bill now says from now on, as long as you're a licensed vet licensed in California, you can do vet. You don't have to do it, but if you want to offer your services through telehealth, you can do that. You know, there's some animals, I've had cats that I could not get into a carrier. Like I would be taking my life into my hands. This would have allowed me to hold the camera up to the vet to say, does that cat need to come in? Or what, you know, is there something I can just do? So this will allow it. Signed into law, again, bipartisan. AB 1572 expands what's right now an emergency regulation under our drought ordinances. It makes it permanent. And what this says is that after a certain date, commercial and municipal users of non-functional turf can no longer use potable water to water that turf. So what does that mean? Grass that's not used for anything. Think the grass that's in a median strip where it says do not walk on grass, not for residential, but for non-residential uses. You will have to use recycled water to water it or replace it. I hope you people do, to replace it with drought tolerant landscapes. It doesn't include functional turf. So it doesn't include turf that you have at a park that people are sitting on. It doesn't include golf courses. It doesn't include grass that a business is using for seeding. It's, you know, it's defined in the bill only as non-functional turf that's not being used for any use. We were sponsored in this bill. Metropolitan Water District came on as a sponsor. I was on their board for 8 years on the MET board. So I do a lot of work in water conservation, water efficiency. I'm going to brush through.
Okay.
2 bills about transportation, trying to get more money into mass transit. Those have become 2-year bills now. We weren't able to get the policy through. I try a lot to get more money into creating. Somebody said, can we start building this stuff already? We need funding to actually, you know, LA wants to have more mass transit. We want to have more things like the Orange Line, the Gold Line. This would help put more money into that, not just in LA, but across the state. The last bill I'll tell you about is about ticket sellers, online ticket sellers. Any of you ever buy tickets online? Do you love your online ticket seller experience? No. Okay. We all thought that it was going to be so great and convenient to buy tickets online, but unfortunately, ticket sellers have learned to use psychology and to get you to spend an inordinate amount of time trying to identify a ticket, put it into a shopping cart, only to find out that once you go through all this, and by the way, they do the same thing for hotels and everything else. Once you do that, so you can't comparison shop, right? Because that price you see online is going to slowly start to morph through junk fees and convenience fees, and we need more money fees into a much more giant ticket. And if you spend a couple hours trying to do this and your child's sitting there saying, I want to go to see Taylor Swift, you may spend more money than you intended to. And then you may find out later that if you get COVID or something happens 6 months later and you can't use that ticket, you are SOL, as my mom says. And you can't sell it, and they are going to take 50%, 75%. If you try to like get someone else to buy that, you can't even give it to your next door neighbor. I took my daughter to see the Nutcracker, and it said on there, they took my ID. That if I wanted to like give that to my mom to take my daughter, that I wouldn't have been able to even have my mother take my. That's not fair. So this bill, we tried to do it. Ticketmaster is a hard group to get to lobby against you, but we're not going to stop. I'm going to do this bill again next year, and we're going to get this policy passed to make it a lot fairer to consumers. So I was going to talk about what we got in budget, but instead we'll go to you.
Okay, well, so we have 8 questions. questions. So if we get through any questions, I understand you do have an out time, so I want to respect that. Okay, so actually, before I get into the questions, and thank you very much for all that. You've got some great stuff on your plate. I have a question for you, or actually not a question, but a friendly amendment to the speed cameras. So on those cameras, is it a clock system that do you know if that's
I think
it's
there's
okay.
parameters, but then it's up to you.
Okay, so the license plate reader cameras that are out there, they also have the technology to go ahead and be hot plate readers. So if there is a stolen vehicle, if there's just been a bank robbery, it can immediately pick that up as well and feed it to the local law enforcement. That technology exists, so you may want to go ahead and look into putting that into the bill. I know the bill's already passed. However, putting that as an option and maybe an amendment or something to that, so that we can curtail some of these terrible things that are going on with these mass robberies and such like that. Okay, so I am going to at the end of these questions, I want to get to the questions that the audience has submitted. I do want to get into a little bit of who your major opponents are in the race that's coming up as well, as who you think about that as well, if we have time. So, so the first couple questions, actually, there's 3 questions, and they're from Larry Slade. They're all he chairs our homeless committee, our unhoused committee. And so I'm going to ask each one of them, and the first one is, do you support or did you support the CARE court legislation? And do you think that the program will be successful? What, if any, obstacles do you anticipate that the program will face?
So let me take a step back. Going back a couple of years now, I don't know how many years, 3 years, 4 years, I introduced legislation with a couple of my colleagues to expand conservatorships for severely mentally ill individuals who are homeless, because 72-hour holds is not enough to get people treatment. And watching people who are severely mentally ill die on the streets is not humane. And if you believe that mental illness is real, then you also should believe that there are people who don't have the ability to make decisions for themselves. And so our bill was focused on people who were mentally ill and also were sick, like literally dying on the streets. And even with that, we introduced this bill 2 or 3 years in a row and could not get it through committee. Couldn't get it through committee. And we finally did in a pilot version, but it wasn't enough. So I absolutely support CARE Court. I supported the expanded conservatorship that I was just at the bill signing with Susan Eggman. You know, I myself was an author of that bill for several years in a row. So I do think that I understand the concerns about the mass institutionalization of people that was happening in the past and whether that was too aggressive. I understand that. I think that's right. But when the mental hospitals were closed many years ago, the promise, first of all, was always to stand up community care facilities. And that was never done. And for many years, a lot of these people were cycling in and out of prison, which is the last place you want to have someone who's in the midst of psychosis or other severe mental illness, but they're only going to get worse, going to be preyed on, certainly not going to get any help. So CARE Court at least gives us now the framework around which to hopefully fund and create beds with mental health professionals where people can get the help they need. I've had family members, I have had 2 family members who both, when they went into their college years, which is when this seems like it manifests itself, one who was severely bipolar and, you know, with major full-blown hallucinations, another who was diagnosed with schizophrenia, who were on the streets. And we were able to get them the help they needed. But the idea, when we did these bills, we had people from NAME, we had people come who were parents of 21-year-olds, legally emancipated. They weren't even asking the state to take care of them. They wanted custody of their children to get them the help they needed. And there was no mechanism under the law to give them the conservatorship, and their children died on the streets. Those are the witnesses we had for this bill. So I think that I understand there were people who were institutionalized who shouldn't have been there, but we have swung way too far in the other direction. And so to me, that is not humane. That is not, you know, that's not taking care of people. In terms of the question of, is it going to work? We need to put more resources into it. And we've just begun that, but we need to put the resources in. We need communities to be okay with having resources, places where people need to be. And sometimes it's going to be in residential settings, but obviously with the support, and we have that now with the boarding cares, but we've lost a lot of the boarding cares. They've been closing across Los Angeles, which is also contributing to the fact that people with mental disabilities, people in recovery are finding it hard to find places to get treatment.
Okay, let me follow up with Larry's third question, which is how do you balance the rights of the homeless against the rights of the community? Should it be illegal to live on the streets?
Well, I think that first of all, we need to make sure people have a place to go. It's, we can't just push people away when there's no place for them. Right now, for every 10 people who walk into a shelter saying I need a place to stay, only 3 of them will be given a place to stay. And that's not 10 of them. So the first thing is we have to make sure that we do have a place for everyone. Have shelters. We need to make sure we have permanent housing for people and affordable housing. We need to stabilize people where they're living now. And we have, the fastest growing population of homeless is senior women, not the mentally ill, it's senior women. And that we should all be ashamed, right? That women who are on fixed incomes, not just women, men too, on fixed incomes who are senior citizens, who don't have another way of getting support, I represent Glendale and Burbank, there's no rent control in those cities. I have seen people, I have friends who had their rent increased 100% multiple times. And that happens to someone who's a senior on Social Security, they have nowhere to go. Now they're going to get priority. We'll probably find them a place to go, a shelter bed, but we may, it's not that easy. So we need to have a place for people to go. And then I think we don't normalize or legalize sleeping on the street. That is not, it doesn't work for anyone. Encampments are horrible places for people that live there. They can be places where people are victimized, where there's crime, where there's drug dealing. They're awful for communities. So I don't believe, I think we first have to make sure that we have a place where people go and not just chase them to some other alley. But then, no, I think that people need to go and be in a shelter or be in housing.
So I'm going to go back to the question just because a lot of the folks in this audience have a conflict thinking that the homeless folks have more rights than they do as either business owners or homeowners. So Larry's question, the first part of the question is, how do you balance the rights of the homeless against the rights of the community?
So it was actually, LA has been in some ways constrained by a court decision. And I'm sure you all know this, that they cannot force people off the streets unless they have a place for them to go, unless they have places for them to go. So even if City of LA, that's my understanding of it, and probably Larry knows more than I do, but the courts have said, unless you provide home housing for people, you can't threaten them with arrest or anything else if they don't have anywhere to go. So I think the first thing is to recognize that we've got to provide housing for people. Some kind of housing that people feel safe in, and that they're willing to go to. We also have to stabilize people who are at risk of becoming homeless. And sometimes we forget about that. LA County has housed more people in the last few years than they ever did in the past, but there are more and more people who lose their housing at the same time. So it's a big problem that's going to take a lot of different ways to solve. But I don't believe that we should normalize living on the street or living in RVs for that matter. And I don't think that we should go out, I think that we need to find ways to compel people to go into the housing that is available. I really do. And by the way, it's not just me. I didn't develop this out of my own feelings. I developed this from talking to the providers themselves. We can't be making it to where it's just super easy for people. And I'm not saying make it hard. I'm not saying go out and do something bad to people. But we really should be focused on getting people the kind of housing that they will accept and then getting people into that housing. The same way I think we should be trying to get people who are mentally ill into treatment or people into having the support they need to get into recovery if that's their issue. But most people who are homeless are not that hard to house population. That chronic homeless population is actually a small percentage of the people who are homeless. The majority of people who are homeless will move into housing. And that's important to remember because we talk about this group as though they're a giant monolith, and they're not. They're not. So the vast majority of people will take themselves to shelters, are looking for housing actively, want to be in housing. And some of them are on the streets because they don't have a choice right now.
Thank you. Okay, so the next two questions, I'm going to combine the questions. One is the first part of this from Rob Bluchon, who is the president of the CNO Property Owners Association. He's on the Zoom call. And then the other one is from Jay Whitestone. I'm going to summarize Jay's question, but Rob's question is: many say that you have supported and voted for most of the housing. I'm sorry. Many say that you have supported and voted for most of the housing bills that have gutted single-family zoning. Can you comment on this? And if it's true, why do you support such bills, and why do you think they are workable and effective? That's his question.
Sure.
And then Jay's question has to do with the controversial 7-story apartment building that's been built or being proposed here in Sherman Oaks recently, and supported by our council person representative. It's 200 units in a residential R1 zone area, 7 stories high. It's about a half a block away from Valley College. The tallest building at Valley College is 3 stories tall. The closest 7-story building is probably 3 miles away. There's a commercial corridor, Burbank, which is less than a half a block away from this location, that has the tallest building on that is a 2-story building, a commercial corridor. So do you support these types of housing, 200 units, 7 stories tall, or affordable housing? That's the question.
So I have supported a lot of housing bills, and I do believe we need to build more housing. I voted against SB 9 and SB 10, however, because I do feel that coming from local government myself, that I do think that local governments have a responsibility to attempt to add the housing that they need. But I also believe that it's the local governments that know where putting that housing is additive and where it would be disruptive. And so I think those decisions are best made locally. When I was on the Glendale City Council, I did something that was controversial in Glendale at the time. I entitled 5,000 units in our downtown. We did it by doing a programmatic EIR for downtown Glendale, which at the time, any of you know Glendale? Raise your hand if you know Glendale. Okay. The downtown in Glendale, pre-Americana, did not allow housing. I kid you not. The zoning didn't allow it. It was only commercial, what they considered to be non-residential commercial. Office buildings, it was an office area. And we rezoned it, and we did a programmatic EIR for up to, I think, 6,000 units. And we then got something like 5,000 units in downtown. And by the way, it's a mix of affordable and market rate. There's actually a couple of buildings there that are 100% affordable, including one that's for returning veterans that I'm very proud of, because it was one of only a few projects in the whole state targeting homeless returning veterans, which there are more than you would think. And, and there is affordable units in the other buildings to mix, and it's been great. You may not like all the design. I don't like the design of every building, but what it did was it activated Brand Boulevard, and it made our small businesses on Brand, do very, very well. But we didn't add that housing in our single family neighborhoods, but we added the capacity that we needed. I do think that communities need to take adding housing very seriously. They need to make sure that your kids have a place to live that's not just in your living room or the spare room if they want it. I have authored bills about ADUs, which I think is a good solution. In my neighborhood in Glendale, people have old ADUs. They're called granny flats. People liked them, and it seemed to me that they should be legal. So I supported that. I've supported other measures. I didn't support SB 9 and 10 because to me, that was sort of a bridge too far, and I had concerns about those policies having to do with fire, ingress and egress, impact on neighborhoods. So that's where I am with housing and with housing bills. And, we can talk about any particular individual bill. And in terms of the project, now I've only recently been briefed about this project. I don't know the site. I will take a drive by it. I read the LA Times article about this series of projects, and I'll tell you, I was really shocked because at the state, with some of the bills that some of the bills that they're using, like density bonus, that was never intended for single family neighborhoods. That was always intended for multifamily. Glendale, we use the density bonus on those buildings, and downtown Glendale, if it's 6 stories or 7 stories, like nobody cares. Nobody in Glendale we've got 20-story buildings in downtown Glendale, so it works just fine. But the idea that you would build a giant apartment building like that, I'm so mystified by kind of how that all happened. And I understand that it's not going to happen anymore, but that's what at least the LA Times article, if it's about the same process.
So there's this particular developer has 3 projects. One, the similar project in Woodland Hills just got turned down by the council member over there. The one in Sherman Oaks that we're referring to got approved by our council member to go forward with no public input at all. And again, this organization, as well as other organizations that we work with very closely, support the increase in housing. And again, what happened in Glendale, as far as in certain areas, the higher density, we support that completely along the commercial corridors, along the transportation corridors, where they are needed. Single family neighborhoods, there has not been a 7-story office building in Sherman Oaks in over 30 years. On Ventura Boulevard, the Main Street, there are locations on Ventura Boulevard that would love to have those types of opportunities. That would be more of a transportation corridor opportunities. But again, residential neighborhoods are kind of at risk of being destroyed in California, because this is spot zoning. I was a planning commissioner for 13 years. So this would have been thrown out in a heartbeat. The community used to have input, and that's through state legislation as far as for additional housing. For that there's some real dangers going on right now. So you don't support that type of spot zone.
Well, I want to look into what happened there before I talk about any specific development, because I've been briefed on it, but I still am trying to understand how it happened. It sounds like it was a city, some kind of a city.
It was
It was a mistake. Okay. Well, so I don't want to talk about any particular development, particularly one that I know you all have strong feelings on. And before I want to see the site, I want to understand how that mistake happened. But in general, I feel that there are places that are ripe for adding housing. Those commercial corridors, those transportation corridors, there are places we're adding, sort of a gentle kind of density, like townhouses, like small lot subdivisions adjacent to single family works really well. And I think that cities, that's why the state bills generally say you're RENA compliant. You have done that work. You're not under the auspices of the legislation. And that's typically what those state bills say. Because what we want to make sure doesn't happen, just to give you the flip side, there are communities that have not added any housing capacity, that have no multifamily, that have not approved any multifamily, that have people commuting in. There are communities that swell to great numbers during the day, but because they have a lot of businesses, and I will not mention any, but I present one, and they haven't added housing. And what that does is the people who work in that community, it's miserable. They're living in Santa Clarita, which is a great place. I mean, these are great places to live, but people don't necessarily want to have to commute for an hour and a half to get to where they're living. So cities have a responsibility too to do their share. Communities where people are being priced out, where they're being forced out of their neighborhoods, right, because of the lack of housing. I don't want to tell them where to build that housing. I think that that's what they're for, but they should add the housings and not just say, oh, that should be somebody else's problem. And that's where the state comes in to say, we want you all to absorb the housing that we need. Being from local government, having those decisions made by the planning commission, as long as it's done equitably, it's not like you're going to put all the housing on the toxic site next to the airport or something. Like, you want to also do it in a way that improves those people's quality of life. Not just anything wrong with airports. Like, I have to qualify everything I said. It's great. It's wonderful to live next to. But you know what I'm saying? Like, we want the cities to be equitable about it, to be fair about adding the housing, but to sit, like when I was in the Glendale Council, we looked at our community and we said, we want to add the housing in this area. It's a prime area. It's going to be really additive. We got the Americana after we did that and made Rick Caruso build housing at the Americana, which he had never done before. And there are people who live there and they love it, And it really activated the downtown of the city. And you know, I have friends that live in areas where they've added I have friends who live in small lot subdivisions. They were formerly single family, but now there's 4 families living there. And it's really nice for that family. And it's in neighborhoods that are more walkable, a little bit denser. So I think that cities need to take this seriously and figure out how to do this in a way that creates a better quality of life for everybody.
Laura, we'd like to invite you.
I need to, we don't, please. We have 3 more questions, and I know that I'm trying to,
You have the school people here.
we do. Thank you for, okay. Shoot, I had a brain fart. I can't, we need to get 2 mics so that, because Laura likes this microphone a lot. So Tom Glick asks, this is an easy question for you. Okay. Do you support the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, agenda, including defunding the police and the support for the Palestinian independence? Is that an easy question?
I don't support defunding the police. I think that when people call the police when they have a problem, they want the police to arrive. I live in a very safe city for a reason. I live in Glendale. And, you know, I'm the mom of a 10-year-old. I live in a 1950s house. I'm not going to say where, but I will say that, you know, I live in a house that is not high security. And I have a large dog, but I want to know that if there's a problem and I call the police, they're going to come fast. You know, not in an hour, but fast. And I think that that's what most people want. I certainly want communities to have input about how policing is done in their community. They want to be respected by the police, but that's different than defunding, right? And I also understand that there are times when we say maybe the police response isn't what we need. Maybe we need mental health counselors coming instead. I think sometimes what people are talking about, that I think is right. We need to have the right response for the right kind of activity. In terms of DSA's comments about Israel and Palestine, I was very deeply offended as a Jew, as somebody who has family in Israel, and as a human being watching terrorists slaughter civilians on purpose, thousands of people to breach the border of Israel and go in and slaughter kids at a rock concert, families, babies, people in a kibbutz, and take hundreds of people hostage. None of that should ever be glamorized or excused or justified. That is crossing a moral line. And I'm not saying that people can't have strong feelings about, you know, what happened to the Palestinians in Gaza or about Israel's actions, but none of that justifies slaughtering innocent people. And a statement that would try to excuse that or blame the victims, to me, is abhorrent.
Thank you. Okay, Bob Anderson asks, Metro will make their final decision next year on rapid transit alternative over and under the Sepulveda Pass. There are 3 monorail alternatives, mostly affordable with the Metro's $8 billion budget. There are 3 subway alternatives, the cheapest of which is a subway, but it's a noisy elevated train of the valley, are outrageously unaffordable and cost $10 to $20 billion more than the Metro's available budget. As chair of the Assembly Transportation Committee, have you asked Metro why they are wasting the time with the money studying unaffordable alternatives? Does the state have an extra 10, 12, or $20 billion for this project?
Well, talk about a not leading question there. It's okay. I certainly want to see us build the Sepulveda, whatever you want to call it, subway, metro. I want to see a train of some sort through there. 405, we've been talking about getting cars off of 405 for what, 30 years, 35 years? It's time to move ahead with something that we have the money to build, certainly, and something that fits the need. Now, I can't sit here right now and tell you exactly what that solution should be, but I will tell you that I think that it should be something that gets people to UCLA, that people will want to ride, that's convenient, that's fast, that's good for the rider, that doesn't force people to sort of stand in the middle of a highway, for instance, something that's, you know, that's nice for the user, that all of us will want to ride and not feel forced to. something that's attractive. And I am open to the discussion about what that looks like, what that is. I think we should have community input about it. Those are I'm going to be looking for, are people going to want to take it? Is it rider centric? And does it get people where they really need to go? Those are going to be the things that I would be looking for. And I hope that we don't spend another 10 years talking about it. When Newsom was doing his infrastructure thing, he said, can you imagine if you were standing in the 405, like with a shovel, like, let's move on this. But clearly we're not as close as I would have hoped to any kind of a groundbreaking, much less the Olympics. I know everyone's like, where do you get all this done by the Olympics? But we should find a way to build consensus and try to move more rapidly.
Okay, is Janet Couples here? She's on Zoom, okay. So she submitted a question, and again, this is gonna be the hardball pitch question. You ready? Drum roll. Why can't the state mandate drip irrigation for agriculture? Homeowners always have to cut down water usage since agriculture uses 80% of the water in the state, and since drip irrigation is a well-proven product, why can't there just be a law passed to mandate that use in agriculture? In the past, Janet has written the legislators, including yourself, about this, and she never gets an answer.
If you ever don't get an answer to something you send me, please let me know directly. We try to answer everything. We don't always get every email. I will tell you that. Believe it or not, the state's website system doesn't always work that way. But so let us know. We'll try to get you an answer. I did a bill a few years ago when I first came into the legislature. That took me 2 years to do. I worked very closely with the Brown administration to require every water agency in the state to now have a water budget. We've never done that in the past. Here in Southern California, whenever there's a drought, what do they tell you all to do? Cut back, conserve water. But other parts in the state, when their hydrology is different, there are parts in the state where they don't even have, they barely have water. So we have not been equal in terms of the burden, even though we are all the same state, and we should all be kind of on the same page. So what my bill did is it said water agencies, agricultural and urban, we're going to come up with a budget based on your hydrology, based on your mix of users, and then you will work with your constituents to do the type of efficiency that you need to live within your budget. And that budget ramps down over time. So here in Southern California, and as you go further south, they're even more efficient. We're very water efficient here. LA grew by something like 10 million people, or couple million people, not 10 million. Sorry, 10 years, they grew by several million people, and yet our water use stayed flat. Do you know that? Not because you're all taking shorter showers, but because you now have a low flow shower head. You may have a low flow toilet. Maybe you have your drip irrigation system, and you're still living a high quality, you're probably still even washing your children. So, we can have the quality of life that we want if we invest in efficiency. And that's what Janet's asking about. What about drip irrigation for agriculture? So my bill does require ag agencies to also live within a certain water budget. That will help. I will say two things. They're getting better. It's taking a while, but they are investing in it. They're getting better. The second thing is our water laws are not good in the state. They are not conducive to efficiency because there are old users of water that draw basically unlimited amounts of water off the Colorado River, and there's very little incentive for them to invest in efficiency and conserve. That's something we looked at this year in the legislature. I was a co-author of legislation that worked around the margins, but at some point, someone will try to get at the heart of some of these very old laws and make them fairer, and there will be World War III in terms of internal California politics over that.
Great, thank you. Do you have a couple minutes before you leave just to talk about your race and who your major opponents are? Oh, yeah, of course you do. So I just want to know, you've got some very big shoes you got to fill with in Adam's job. Who are the big players that are running against you, and what would you do that really going to put you ahead of the group?
Sure.
And then please stick around afterwards because we do have a quick report from Buckley, And then I do want to talk to you about who's going to speak here next month. You're definitely going to want to be here for her.
And when you're done with me, I am gonna sneak out because I would
Yeah.
my 10-year-old will literally wait up until I get home, which is never good.
And I'm sending you these home with the emails of folks.
Great. Thank you. Well, thanks for asking. I didn't realize I was gonna be asked, but I'm happy to tell you. So I'm running for Adam Schiff's House seat. Big shoes to fill. I'm a big Adam Schiff fan as well, and he's been great to work with over the years as an elected official. I can tell you he's very responsive. He's, obviously, in my mind, I think he's been great about stepping up to try to save our democracy. It's my personal view. I think he's, to me, he's a bit of a hero. And I hope that he will win the US Senate seat. I will be voting for him. My main opponents, so there's a lot of people running in this race. There's something like 16 people right now. The main people, I will put the viable candidates would be myself, Mike Fuhrer, who you probably know, former city attorney of Los Angeles, a state senator named Anthony Portantino, who just moved into the district, who represents he's from La Piñata, Flint Ridge. He just moved into Burbank to run, so he's represented sort of the far east part of the district. Nick Melvoin, who is a school board member over the hill in sort of the westernmost part of the district. The district runs up and through West Hollywood. So Nick is represented LA, he's an LA Unified School Board member, kind of in the Windsor Square, Hancock Park area. Seppi Shine, who just got elected to the West Hollywood City Council about a year and a half ago, I would say are more of the top tier candidates.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's hear it for.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate your time. Oh, I didn't introduce my staff, but you know that, right?
We know them. They're great. Okay, so Lisa, will you come up here? And Jay, you want to come up here for a second? So you guys, before you leave, again, I do want to go ahead and let you know that, does anybody here remember our neighborhood prosecutor, Tamara Galatson? Okay, whatever happened to Tamara, right? Okay. Does anyone remember when our neighborhood prosecutors used to come here to the meetings? What happened to them? They don't come here anymore, right? So the neighborhood prosecuting division of the city attorney's office has been put on hold, okay? Tamara Galatson recently got appointed as the person in charge of a new division of the city attorney's office. And so she's going to, sir. Thank you. We have a meeting still going on here. Thank you. So anyway, she's going to be our speaker next month. So it's going to be very interesting to hear what she has to say. I'm looking forward to it. And we have Jay Whiteslow, who's going to introduce Lisa.
Hi, hang in there for just a few minutes. Tonight's an important night relative to the address you're going to hear from Buckley. It's one of the mandated conferences, if you will, that Buckley School has to have with the community. And I have Lisa Turchin here, who's the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer of the school, and Sally Sakon, who's the Director of Communications at the school. They're going to let you know quickly what's going on and be happy to take any questions that you have or any suggestions that you might have to make your life a little bit easier regarding the traffic or anything else surrounding the school. So Lisa?
Thank you so much, Jay, Matt. Yes, I'm Lisa Turchin. I'm the CFO of the Buckley School, and Sally Sakon is here with me. And although we attend the monthly SOHA meetings once a year, as Jay mentioned, we come here for the annual update. So I want to let you know what's happened since the last time I was here. The first is that we have to file an annual compliance report for our enrollment, certifying the level of enrollment. We have 830 students a cap. Last year, we were over enrolled, and so we made a contribution to a neighborhood protection fund. This year, we are at 830, and so we certified. Last year, it was due to COVID, impacts of COVID, that we didn't get the same level of attrition that we had the prior 2 years. So we stabilized our enrollment. We're happy to report we're full compliance. Second, we filed an application for the field. We have a baseball field up on the south end of our campus. It's a 50-year-old field. And so we filed an application with the city to replace the existing 50-year-old dugouts, bleachers, the fencing, and modernize the field with artificial turf for water conservation purposes. No additional square footage is being added. We had our hearing with the Mulholland Design Review Board, which recommended approval, acknowledging it was substantially conforming to our existing field with minor modifications for the turf and for an ADA walkway, which we're also putting in to be able to get around the field. Planning department should be issuing a letter of determination. Because we're a school, we hope to start in June because we want to get things done over the summer. So we're targeting, if we pending approval, that was target starting in June. Sally, my assistant here, is holding up the before and after. And I was showing Tom Flick these plans, and I think he might have left, but Tom was formerly in the planning department, and it's really minor modifications. But we wanted to just make community aware of that. Third is that over the years, as I mentioned, we contributed to the Neighborhood Protection Fund. We worked with Councilman's office and LADOT, and Jay was part of that committee, where they looked at possible safety and traffic calming measures in Sherman Oaks in the vicinity of the campus. And in doing so, there's a couple of areas, including the use of the neighborhood streets for commute cut-throughs, that they've made recommendations for some improvements. One is some speed humps along Valley Vista, west of Stansbury, location that will be determined by the LADOT. The next item that would be, is approved by LADOT or by the committee, but implemented by DOT, is the reconfiguration of the intersection at Valley Vista. Tom, you were just mentioned, you missed your, yes, anyway, the intersection of Valley Vista and Beverly Glen, to install a roundabout there in order to increase the traffic safety at that intersection. The timing of this will be dependent upon LADOT's scheduling and resources. The last couple things is Halloween is coming up. Stansbury is a very popular street if you have kids or grandkids, and to come up, and we're working with the councilman's office to get some, to be able to close the street down. If you do make it for Halloween, come on down and walk down to the south end. Buckley has what we call Bukali, and we're giving out obviously candy and some water, and we'd love to see you there. Lastly, this year, our fall performance is Little Shop of Horrors. Our community preview date is November 8th at 6:30, and you are all invited on us, so we'd love to have you. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Buckley. And thank you, everyone, Sherman Oaks. We'll see you next month.